Hello, and welcome back to King's Corner. Today I will be interviewing a group of well-known adventurers within our beloved community. Bofone and Lapernum from the exploration-focused org known as Curvature, and my own fellow Cornerstone member Delori. You may remember Delori from an interview I've conducted about a useful tool on our website known as the Planetary Survey, and you may also remember Bofone, who spearheaded an incredibly ambitious and community-supported expedition to the star at the center of Stanton's solar system. I am honored to have all of you back here with me today as we discuss your latest stellar quest, a trek to a distant point beyond the planet Hurston for the purpose of witnessing a complete solar eclipse. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
So honored to come. Thank you for having us.
So,
Hello, everyone.
so I think we can get straight to the point here. You can see in the background the success and the result of your efforts, which was to completely obfuscate the Stanton Star with one of the planets in the Stanton solar system. Currently, we see Hurston in the background there, and we are completely in its shadow. And as you can see, there is a ring around Hurston showing us that the star is behind it, and that there is nothing else obfuscating it except for that. This is a fascinating thing to see. So I'd like to know, I guess we can just ask right away, can you tell us how you decided that the next leg of your journey through Star Citizen wanted to be a solar eclipse, specifically from Hurston's perspective? Why did we choose this planet? And why did you decide to go towards the solar eclipse as the next destination?
I could certainly step in and talk a little bit behind the origin of this entire mission. About 3 months ago, we had an idea to build an offline simulation uh, for the entire Hurston local system um, for some other work and projects. Uh, um, and by the time we finished that simulation, we realized, the uh, there is a possibility to see such an eclipse in game, and hence we designed a mission in the most immersive ways possible currently in Star Citizen without too much overhead. And we designed the mission, and we tested thoroughly for about a month. Um, and the mission finally took place on June 4th. Um, and yeah, the mission successfully completed in one single session. I think it took about 10 and a half hours in total. So that's so initially basically it was kind of by accident that we um, you know set an objective to see an eclipse. Um, but I think it's also a happy accident that the we picked a planet that is closest to the Stanton Star, and then also relatively small compared to, say, Crusader. And that renders the distance required to reach um, total eclipse point much shorter. On top of it, again, by happy accident, discovered that uh, due to the addition of volumetric clouds layer on Hurston, um, probably this is one of the more unique eclipses that you can um, see in the game currently.
That's that is
Yeah.
true. Hurston does have a varied geology, right? Its surface um, has many mountains, canyons, different areas that don't particularly make the planet itself a smooth sphere, so to speak. So I think that plays into some of the effects we're going to see, or that you're going to be talking about later into the interview. If we take a look out there at the solar eclipse, you can see Hurston. We can see features on the planet there. We can also see that there is a bit of a glow around the outside of it. There are some there are some features about Hurston you had mentioned that you had chosen to highlight here, I suppose. I guess we'll jump a little bit forward. Can you talk about why you chose Hurston? how the geology plays a factor in what we're seeing here, and possibly talk about some of the different types of points along the journey here that would show us different effects that we would see, such as let's say, I think they're called Bailey beads. Could you talk about that a little bit and how it may affect what we see in the image behind us here?
Absolutely. I would say I'll first kind of talk about why we picked Hurston, and then I'll shortly head over to Lapernum, who's our journalist on board the mission,
Sure.
and then he was taking screenshots as well as videos throughout the entire journey. So he more different views at different distances. And then I believe Delori also noticed the first Bailey, so the first glare bright spot while we were on our final approach to the destination. He could step in and talk about that experience. So the reason why we picked Hurston, again, it was due to the fact that we wanted to do a simulation of the entire Hurston local system. So it and by the end we realized, oh, it's also the smallest planet and it's closest to the Stanton Star. That means the Umbra shadow zone convergence distance of that shadow zone will be somewhat a very short distance compared to other planets. However, there are much simpler and easier eclipses to reach to. For example, all of the Hurston moons, they're even smaller, and then they're also because Hurston, the local system, is close to the basically occupies the innermost orbit of Stanton. So they're much easier to get to that exact total eclipse point. But with that, Hurston has the new addition of volumetric clouds, and especially with Lorville, you see that densest cluster of volumetric clouds. So we thought, why not, just pick Hurston, and we'll see if we can spot the volumetric clouds from far away. And as you could see, that indeed we were now able, even at this far away from the planet, which is about 20,000 kilometers away from the planet, you would still be able to see the volumetric clouds. And by happy accident, obviously, the pink ring is it was total unexpected. We didn't think that was even possible. But apparently it is. The light rays coming from the backdrop of the Stanton Star actually penetrate through the atmospheric layer, illuminate it, kind of almost ionized it to make this ear glow.
It
Yeah,
really is an amazing um, demonstration of how powerful the graphics engine, the simulation that they have created can be here. If we're this far away from that object and the light behind it is not only coming around it, but it also is being diffracted through its atmosphere, um, and in such a way where not only do we see some light rays and some pins and dots here and there, but you can also kind of see the edge or the rounded edge of the planet is not completely and totally uniform. Even now, if I look, I can see small deviations in its curve, and it's all 100% produced by the engine. None of that is any type of um, uh, anomaly or anything like that. That is showing the fact that the planet's surface has some differences in height and shape there. and also, like you said, the volumetric clouds of Hurston can also affect how the light comes across too. So now that gives me a better understanding of why you chose this location for for the solar eclipse. You could have done any of the moons or any of the other bodies, but Hurston had a surprisingly um, uh, good effect for what you were looking for. Now you said this happened in 10 hours from not just planning it, but trying to find the spots that you wanted to get to, and then documenting where those spots were so that you could come back and visit them again. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
Yes, yes, yes. The entire mission took uh, about 10.5 hours, which is longer than planned. Certainly dive into that in a while, in a moment, and talk about interesting stories that happened, kind of prolong the duration of the journey. Yeah. And any other things that Lapernum or Delori like to say about the kind of what your experience was while seeing the final, kind of the perfect annular rain appear for the first time while we were on the final approach sequence.
Well, if you allow me, this is Delori speaking. I may have a little, yeah, little things to say about that regarding the question asked by you, Demetrius, regarding the purpose of the and the whole idea behind the mission. I certainly don't have as much dedication to science as Bo here. My main goal was to work into something and to find the purpose and to put my time and strength and desire to go as far as I can with this team at Hughes. So it all started by planning on some logistics and testing ship loadouts, both for survivability in terms of food and water needs, but also in terms of components, health, and ship durability for the Karak we used. And actually, it was not so much about reaching the umbral focal point for me. I guess reaching the focal point was a cherry on the cake. But maybe I should not say that to Bo. Maybe you should not hear it. But I think my favorite moment was when we spent multiple hours in game, loading and unloading the ship to try to put the crates here, put the food there. But what if something happens in this room? So maybe let's put stuff in this other room. It's the whole preparation, the whole expedition being set up, and the documentation we created to support upcoming expeditions. It was like the perfect test run, and yeah, seeing the eclipse at the end was just one way to realize we done it right.
That's great, Delori. Every successful expedition needs someone to think about logistics, someone to test out any of the plans or prepare or think in a direction that supports the main effort. And you are known for being one of the most helpful people in I think every expedition that I know you've been a part of. So I could see why you would take such joy from that, and it's greatly appreciated. I don't want to speak for Bo, but Bo, could you respond a little bit to what he just said about how he helped prepare?
Sure. Yes. Oh my God. I mean, I wish I have a way now showing on the screen for our audience that how much preparation Delori has done for the final mission. He prepared a 20 pages long
Yeah.
kind of trial report
Wow.
over the course of a month during our logistic preparations. Mm, Thoroughly testing every single edge scenarios that could ever happen during our from our mission design, and to ensure that this was possible uh, to finish in one single run on a single ship in a single session. So
Dare I
yeah,
say,
kudos to
dare I
Hillary.
say, he
It's
was a
just
project
amazing
manager.
work.
wasn't he? But more or less, he created the checklist and the project plan to make sure everything was going to go right. Does that sound like a fair description of how he helped?
Yes, yes. Even though his kind of official title during the on board the ship was archivist, but apparently he helped basically design the entire logistic preparation state, prepared everything, such to ensure the successful mission.
And this is the magic of Star Citizen. It is so fun to do, actually.
Delori, did you run into any problems or unexpected hurdles while you were planning out this process? You said it took you a month, or you spent a month or so putting together the checklist and making sure everything was documented properly.
It's uh, it's strange. When I was searching for the proper food and proper crate and stuff management, it was interesting and fun and going across various resources we have here and there in terms of data. But the major hurdle was actually doing the test itself when you start, and because it was all very much planned and designed already on paper, it happened to be actually pretty smooth on the terrain. So it happened to be actually pretty boring, and I mean, it nothing happened basically. I did not have to struggle against starvation, or I did not to struggle because I hurt myself once in the elevator and was starting to bleed. Because it was a pretty uneventful mission, uh, and that's why on space stations, the crew is always kept extremely busy. You are not allowed to be just being bored and doing nothing, because that's where you start to be to act hectic or do mistakes. So
Right.
yeah, the major hurdle was actually waiting.
In my field, and I do project work, field project work all the time. I'm a fan of planning for what I call risk. I mean, the project goals are pretty easily laid out at the beginning, and we know what we have to do to get there. But I always assume things are going to go worse at some point in time or bad at some point in time. So if you're prepared for that, then I think that that's the best way to ensure, to guarantee success of the mission. You guys had no idea how long it was going to take to get there, or maybe you were able to estimate some of the time. But I'll tell you, you succeeded not because you didn't try or weren't prepared. I think you succeeded because you were prepared, even though you didn't need some of or as much of that stuff as you had gathered and put together. I think that is definitely part of the insurance of the overall efforts. What it sounds like to me. Um, okay. At this point, was Lapernum part of the effort? Was he involved going into the planning and the preparations phase, or did he come on board more during the execution of the event?
Uh, yeah, so this is Lapernum speaking. I was here during all the loading sequence. Since I'm a journalist, I need to record the whole process, including the preparation stage, and I just followed all my teammates and I record the whole sequence. So yeah, I will also present this part in the final documentary as well.
Excellent. So that's another thing that I'm glad you brought up. You are working on kind of like a document, or not a document, but a documentary on what they did, on what you all did, and the efforts that everyone went through, and the different phases, and then all the way through to success. It's good to hear that there's going to be a deeper and more stylized and personal survey of the results that come out, and I very much look forward to seeing that. Um, Bo, can
Thank you
you
so much.
talk a little bit about how having Lapernum with you during the beginning stages or phases helped either drive what you guys were doing or affected the way in which you were operating? I'm kind of curious how his role contributed before you actually made it out to the observation point.
Absolutely. Um, So we wanted to do this, right? To design the mission in a sort of very immersive way. So we came up with these core positions. We had, well, by the end of the mission, we had 12 in total. During the mission, we had a 6 core crew position. So at any given time, we're kind of 6 crew on board, and some of them are rotating, logging in and out, kind of shifts. So we had well, captain, that was me, and we had scientist, archivist, Delori, and we had loadmaster, so Delirious Rex, and we had Lapernum as our journalist, and then we had a medic, who's also our longtime team member, Dr. Entropy, and we have several kind of assistant crews or general crew. And the journalist part, which we thought, what if we try to capture the full Star Citizen experience from the very beginning, during the preparation phase as well, not just for the mission. That way, we'll be able to demonstrate the full story in the end. So by having a journalist from the very beginning and always following the rest of, even doing, like, for example, went to different shops to purchase logistic items, and we had to kind of decorate, well, not actually decorate, but basically assigning kind of storage, personal storages, and those kind of storage containers, utilizing them in the way that they were supposed to be used with. For example, we had multiple the smallest type where you can purchase from cargo decks, and then we had all those 1 SCU and then 2 SCU boxes. We positioned them on board the ship, and we even prepared an exact duplicate of that primary mission vessel. So we need multiple ships, and in the beginning, it was the primary mission vessel was my carrier named Crane, hence the Crane Expedition team, where that name came from. But quickly, once, well, when it was almost ready, everything loaded. if you see it from, like, another ship's perspective, you would see almost maybe 30 or 50, 30 to 50 kind of boxes and signals all over the ships. You would see all the kind of the little box icon show up on your HUD if you're scanning the ship from another ship. But Star Citizen happened, and it was at its finest moment. So we kind of lost everything due to a sequence of unfortunate events. My own internet disconnection, followed by a server 30K, and then followed by a bug or a long kind of known issue where if someone else land your ship on inside a hangar, the station somewhat doesn't recognize it, and then it will, instead of storing it the next time you could store it for the first time, but the next time you want to pull it out, it will show as a ship unknown state. So we basically lost our first fully loaded mission vessel. We had to use a secondary backup, but and due to some kind of just scheduling issue, at the time we couldn't quickly enough to gather people and set up the secondary one. So we temporarily kind of just switched to use our journalist ship, which is another character, and we named it Anya, which is a reference paying a homage to very popular anime character in the current season from Spy X Family, if anyone gets that reference. And it was a happy accident. And by the end, we reached the Umbra focal point, and we see this perfect pink rain, and that perfectly matches up with that anime character's hair color. Yeah, that's kind of why we wanted, and we had every crew from the very beginning of the mission, even during the preparation phase,
That's fascinating.
capture the whole experience.
I think I think that is great. Even though you experienced, the one thing we're certain about in any project, any effort, any exploration expedition, the one thing we're certain about, even though we're going out into the unknown, is that something is going to go wrong at some point in time. And we plan the best we can for it, but sometimes circumstances are outside of our control. And you can either let that get you down and knock you off your motivation, or you can just pick yourself back up off the floor and keep going. It sounds like you guys did. But it also sounds like Lapernum was documenting this. So even though, unfortunately, during the execution of the mission, you lost that first Carrack, which I think was called Crane, even though you lost that, you still have all of the footage and the observations from Lapernum to at least be able to enjoy that. And you guys were able to simulate something that I think we're going to see as time goes forward. We're going to see that kind of multi-crew effort, even though we don't have, even though the cargo refactor is not here as of the time of this interview. Eventually, that's going to be something that long voyages are going to require. We're going to have to fuel up ships. We're going to have to put a bunch of equipment in there and food and things that we need to survive and possibly medical gear. And then we're going to be on our own once we're outside of local space. So even though you lost that first ship in your effort, you still gained some joy in going through the motions and the efforts to see what that's going to be like. And I can't imagine that you didn't get at least some joy from doing that. I think that's great. So then Lapernum brought out his ship named Anya, which you said is a direct relation to a character in, I think you said Spy X. Is that right?
Yeah, Spy X Family. Yeah,
right. I've
very
heard
popular
of it.
anime series.
I've heard of it, but I haven't
past
seen
season.
it. But you said that the character has purple hair. Is that right? Or pink hair. Sorry, pink hair.
Yeah, pinkish.
Yeah.
Pinkish hair.
And then when you arrived at your destination, the color that you saw from the luminescence around the planets was that color. So there was some interesting destiny involved in this effort as well.
I believe so.
Is
Yeah,
what
I
it
believe
sounds
so.
like. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
more than just coincidence. Perhaps that's something that Star Citizen knew that you guys needed. I think that's great. I'm going to switch over to Lapernum real quick and ask, up until that point where Crane came apart, so to speak. Oh, did we lose Lapernum? I'm just noticing. If you're still there, are you still able to hear us, Lapernum?
Yes, a quick pause. I got kicked.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm still going to ask. We're going to pretend like you're still sitting there. Can you tell us what it was like, or how it felt to at least document all the preparation in that ship up until that particular point?
I will say this experience is unforgettable in my whole life. Like, this is my very first time recording such a process in game, and both in game and in real life. So I was pretty nervous. Like, I didn't know what will happen. I didn't know what people will say during my interviews. So yeah, I kind of feel like I'm unprepared, and I didn't know how to be prepared. But after the whole process, I felt that, yeah, that's how this thing should be. This thing should be. Like, this is what Star Citizen is. Like, Star Citizen is a game filled with unknown, filled with unpreparedness. So what we will do is to get used to it and adjust ourselves during the whole process. Like, even if anything happened, we will find some methods, find some ways to deal with that,
I
and that's
think
what we did. Yep.
I think that's great, Lapernum. To me, you described something that Bo told me about on the last interview that he and I did when he went to the Stanton Star. Um, he felt a couple of times during his journey what I defined as immersion, and it sounds to me like there were moments that you felt immersed in this game. It took over and the way I define immersion is when I feel like this game makes me feel something. When I'm like, wow, it took my emotions and made me excited or sad or something other than frustrated, because frustration comes from all alphas, right? But when you feel excited, when you feel joy, when you feel, I don't know, a sensation of some type that you weren't expecting to feel or you were hoping to feel and you finally got it kind of naturally, organically from the game, that I believe is what you were describing. And that's great because not only did you feel that, you were part of the effort to document these things. And that's what a journalist does. I mean, they collect, they observe, and they distribute what they saw without any alteration, observing events as they happen, and then collecting them together in such a way that the people involved and anybody else who's interested can read about them or visualize them at a later date and better be able to understand what happened in those moments. So even through the first loss of the crane ship, you were not only observing things, but you were able to help because you provided another means of transportation for the crew to use. And it sounds like it wasn't just for Delori and Bo to enjoy, but about 12 other people, perhaps, were also a part of this effort. So you helped out in more than just your own experience. You helped with the immersion of about a dozen other people. Is that a fair thing to say, what I've described about your experience?
Yes, I was pretty happy with that I can help the whole process, the preparing stage. So I was not like only a character sitting aside and watch the whole process. I am actually the one who joined the whole process. That's make me pretty happy. And also like when we lost Crane, like the first vessel, I was pretty disappointed, and I also believe Bo was pretty disappointed. I almost thought that, oh, this operation is over. You know, it's like it's a disaster. And after that, I feel like right after we solved this problem, like we loaded the second ship, Anya, I suddenly feel released. Um, the operation is here. It's still doable. Uh, yeah, we can still see the eclipse. That is the most happiest. That is the happiest thing at that time. Yeah.
All of it was worth it, is what I'm hearing. All the
Yes.
disappointment, the excitement, the result, obviously, and what it's going to mean to you down the road. Because this is not going to be the only time that you have this type of feeling. This game's going to do this for us, and it's only going to get better. And we're only going to depend on it even more for the type of joy that folks like us, especially explorers like you guys, want to see out of this game. I believe if Chris Roberts ever sees this interview, I think he'll be satisfied with what you guys have experienced. This is what he wanted for his players, and I'm so glad that you guys don't let the realities of risk and sometimes failure and tripping up stop you from your journey. Perseverance is as important as all of the preparation. Delori spent a month working on the plan. Bo had the idea and the drive, and he spearheaded this whole event. But I don't think any of it would have been possible without the people supporting it, and I know he'll agree with me on that statement. But also, I'm sure in the back of everybody's mind, not only were they assisting on just another exploration mission, this was kind of an emotional journey for them as well, and I think that's great. I know exactly what you mean. So, okay.
Exactly, and I would like to add to that. As I think, as Chris Roberts used to say, or many other people now kind of get on that ideology where Star Citizen is always trying to take it to the point of realism and take it back to the point of fun. And that's what inspired me for this whole. And the past long expeditions, such as last year's Operation Icarus. And but at the same time, I need to say this as well. And in the current stage of the game, current environment, I always tell new players, or I'll always tell other people, that you sort of need to develop your own Stockholm syndrome. You gotta love to. Sometimes you just gotta develop that kind of attachment to things, so that you overcome
I think
with all the
if I may
yeah.
add to that point, I think this is what I get from what you're trying to communicate there. This game tests how we deal with disappointment. And if you don't know how to find joy in this game, if you don't know where to attach it, you wouldn't want to play this game for more than 10 minutes. And I hesitate to say it's a game, it's still an alpha, but the things that it provides for us, if you are willing to persevere and continue forward and enjoy the things that you do, nothing can stop you. You know, I think that's part of what you're talking about and touching on. The things that you enjoy are absolutely there, even in this early state. And that is so exciting, because the final product, if we can ever find a point where we can say, yeah, this game is released, it's on its release candidate, it's going to be a perpetual development cycle. But if we ever do get to that point, imagine how much more that it's going to be, an order of magnitude more joy and attachment. Yeah, I like the Stockholm Syndrome reference, because we are captivated. We are arrested by what we see in this game. I think it's one of the reasons why people who play this game and then get frustrated with what they see, because they run into the barriers of what this game has. Like, wow, I can see so far out, but I can't visit any other stars. I can't do simple things like I can in other games. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say like I haven't felt those feelings and emotions too. But the longer I allow myself to empathize with the development process and the faith that I have in the final product, and in Chris Roberts' vision, the more joy I find in this game, even through the frustration. So I totally get what you're saying. I think that's wonderful, because you can't do what you guys just did in any other game out there. There might be some physics simulations where you could see eclipses, but we're not spending a ton of time in a physics simulation. We're spending time in Star Citizen, in a solar system simulation that also is doing more than just science. It gives us an environment for us to be the scientists, not just to observe it, but to make our own expeditions out to places to see things like a full solar eclipse. So that's cool. So,
if I may add something also,
yeah,
on the joyful side, one thing that always amazes me is the fact that we are a team of maybe 8 to 10 constant players at Curvature, and from across all time zones, and yet we still manage to fly all together, and to spend so much time planning and working and doing things all together. I mean, it's the joy is in team playing, and we have to invent games to play together. But this game, this whole architecture allows it. It's that's where you can recognize a good sandbox, is when you can actually play and even play outside of it. It's that's a sign it is well made, actually.
yeah,
Exactly.
It's the cliche
Uh,
about it's the friendships we made along the way. That applies here sincerely, I think. It strengthens friendships. It encourages people to continue working together. And the time zone thing is difficult. In Cornerstone, we have people all over the world just like you guys. And I know it's hard to get together, but when we do, it is so wonderful. And that's just a great thing that it brings everyone together, even in your adventures there. That is just great. So now that we've talked a little bit about the drivers to this and what it meant to you as you went along, and how it affected each of you and how you kept going even though there were some bumps in the road, I'm kind of curious about the process itself. So there's some math involved here. It's simple linear math, I believe, but there is definitely some orbital mechanics, celestial mechanics, if you will, involved. Can you talk a little bit about what it took? Did you just point in a direction and fly there until you obscured the sun, or were there some calculation going on in here? And if so, what was that calculation like, and was it easier or more difficult than you had expected when you started looking into it?
Um, Sure, yes. There's quite a lot involved. Like I said in the beginning, we wanted to do this in the most kind of immersive possible. Theoretically, just since the scale, even though it's pretty big in solar system, but if you just pick up very fast ship and then you go flying in a direction that's kind of approximately to the right kind of direction that you would see the two objects kind of merge together, you would eventually find a good spot to see an annular eclipse or other types. Depending on your dedication, it might take a very long time to kind of pinpoint the exact location. But we wanted to do this in kind of the most, well, I don't have a better word than immersive at this moment, but I guess another word would be precise.
Scientifically
Precise way to,
accurate, right?
right. So we designed our mission into 4 stages. The stage 0 was logistic preparation. Stage 1, we call it the launch point positioning. The idea was simple. You basically find any point that lies on the Tropic of Cancer, which is on the southern hemisphere of Hurston. So currently, all the planets or planetary objects, they're kind of rotating around an upright axis in relation to the ecliptic plane. But I believe for 2 reasons they had to move the Stanton Star object way up there above the ecliptic plane and also off to one side. First would be simulating kind of a tilted rotational axis such that you have perpetual sunrise and perpetual sunset on the polar regions on these planets and moons. That's why they move it all the way up there. I think the second reason would be kind of clearing the path for quantum travel. For example, if you're traveling from Hurston L1 to Hurston L3, if the sun was at the middle, then the quantum path would get blocked by the star object. So those 2 factors combined, they kind of move the Stanton Star kind of offset, and then that created a little bit difficult because if it was at the exact center or the system origin, in real life would be the barycenter entire local system. If it would, if it was at the center, then you could possibly just direct quantum travel towards Hurston L2 and jump in the middle. Then you would reach a point where you can easily see an annular eclipse. But now, since it's offset, you would have to take a manual flight, no matter which way you try to do the micro jumps. There's always a manual flight session required to get below the ecliptic plane. So that being said, we thought, okay, now let's locate a perfect point on that Tropic of Cancer circle. And we actually traversed the entire kind of circle. We flew around Hurston, that Tropic of Cancer, following that path, and then we picked multiple candidates of launch point. And in the end, we chose 2 candidates as our launch point. They're kind of exactly opposite to each other. So depending on the exact start time for a mission on that mission day, we would choose either one of 2, because we had to kind of wait for. I'll explain just in a moment. We had to wait for a very perfect timing for a decoupling procedure. So once we locate that point, and then all you need to do is take off and fly straight away from the planet until you reach that what we call the geosynchronous decoupling point. And that point happens to be on the edge of rotating kind of physics grid. Also happens to be the object container. of the Hurston planet. Once you reach that point, then you gotta wait for that perfect moment where that point is exactly opposite from the Stanton Star and behind the Hurston planet. And then you step outside. Once you step outside, you're kind of decoupled from the planet's rotation. Then you keep traveling towards that direction until you reach the distance of the shadow convergence, where the shadow converge. So that's kind of the summary and the idea behind the method we chose.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Let me summarize, see if I understand. You wanted to, in order to get at least this far in the journey, you wanted to orient yourself a certain way. You mentioned the Tropic of Cancer, which I think is 30 degrees south, or is that right? 30 degrees south on the planet?
It depends on how far the planet is to the Stanton Star, and for Earth, it's I forgot the exact number, but for Hurston, it's different. For other planets in Stanton system, they're all different.
Okay. So you got to a certain latitude, I believe, and you flew around, you found a point, and then you flew outward from that point. And there was more than one point that you selected based on, I guess, when you wanted to launch, is what I thought I heard. And then you flew out from that, and then you got as far as you needed to, and then that's where we're at this point, I believe. You flew out until you were in. At that point, had you gotten to a spot where you could see a total eclipse, or was there still a chromosphere? Was there still umbra until you were able to get to that center point where it was a perfect obfuscation of the planet?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe if I understand it correctly, we when we decouple from the rotating physics, we were still inside of the umbra shadow. Keep traveling for about, I believe it was about 16,000 kilometers ish until we reached that exact point called the umbra focal point. At that exact location, you would see a total eclipse where the angular diameter star is exactly the same as the angular diameter of Hurston planet. At that point, you would see kind of you would see the atmospheric layer, kind of transparent atmospheric layer, but you wouldn't see that beautiful glow from the rain. And then we had to travel about 400 kilometers further down that direction. Then the kind of the angular diameter of the star backdrop is just large enough to kind of cover the entire atmospheric layer, the width of the atmospheric layer, and that it kind of illuminates the entire Hurston atmospheric layer, and then produces this air glow, beautiful air glow.
That corona, right? That luminescence, backlighting almost, if you will, even though the sun is completely, the Stanton Star is completely obfuscated by the planet. That's fascinating. When you first saw that, how did it feel when you first got to that point?
Oh, I would say I was concentrating on the course correction, navigation, on the final approach sequence, because we had our mission control. We had like basically plotted down every kind of stage, and then up to the point where we were supposed to arrive, and then we had kind of scheduling down to the minutes accuracy. So during the last final approach sequence, I was concentrating on kind of getting the ship to the right location. But Delori was watching the whole final approach moment, and then along with Lapernum, so they would certainly have more input on the experience that they had during that moment.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So if you have had a chance to have a look at the trailer of our full documentary, it's already posted on YouTube. at the end there was a shot like the ring around the Hurston starts to become complete. That is while we are approaching the umbral focal point. So yeah, I was looking at. That means that I was looking at the rear of Eric of the whole time, and when the first glare came out from the peripheral of the Hurston, I was like shocked. Not gonna lie, I didn't see any eclipse in real life. So this eclipse in Star Citizen was the first eclipse I see in my whole life.
That's amazing.
It's yeah, that was not a complete eclipse at the very beginning. It's like a Bailey beads. So and I just told the whole team, "Oh wait, come on, look at the back of our carrack," and everyone was shocked. It's so beautiful. The ring will slowly fill up the whole circle, and yeah, if you still remember how you felt uh while you're watching your first eclipse in your life, that is how I felt when I saw that eclipse. Yes.
I was a
Magical.
Yeah, it
That's the
is
word.
magic. I was a
Magic,
kid when I
exactly.
saw my first one. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I remember you can't stare at the sun. So we made these boxes when I was in like the first grade. I remember it was a thing, and you cut a hole in the box, and the sun like is like a little pinprick on the far side, and you look at it, and then when the eclipse happens, you can see the circle just slowly kind of fill in. And as a kid, I didn't really understand what I was seeing, but I thought it was neat. And then recently in 2017, I was lucky enough to be in Tennessee working there, and the August 21st total eclipse occurred when I was down there. It was about 15 minutes of time, and everybody in the building that I was working in, everybody went out to the parking lot, and everybody in all the buildings around the business park that we were working at that time was outside, and everybody was looking up, and it was a little cloudy. It was partially cloudy, and suddenly I mean, the sun was it still seemed bright, but it got to a moment where all of that brightness and luminescence just started to fade, and it was like twilight. It was dusk out, and it lasted only for like 7 or 8 minutes, and then the sun started to slowly, like the sky started to dim back up again, but you could tell it wasn't as bright as a normal day, and I felt like I lost time. It happened. It stunned me. It was amazing. I could not believe that I got to witness something like that. Bo, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you get to witness that same event from a different angle? Is that correct?
Yes, I was when that happened. I was west coast of the U.S. and I was actually in middle of the summer class, morning class, and all we felt was, well, I didn't anticipate that eclipse. Didn't watch the news, but we did like because the sky suddenly dipped down, and we thought it was just a regular kind of heavy fog in the uh, kind of northern California region. Every morning during that kind of season, it's always like that. Uh, but then we quickly realized, oh no, that's something different. So, um, well, by the time we realized that was the eclipse, and everybody rushed out to see parking lot. It was kind of too late, but while I was still in the classroom and before the teacher dismissed the class, I kind of secretly text my girlfriend and then I woke her up so that we could she might be able to take photos from much better point of view from our apartment. So uh, I think we got a few shots, but yeah, it's for me, it's even more mesmerizing kind of moment. Is um, that heavy fog or mist that in every early morning kind of comes through the almost the entire Bay Area. It's like you have this waterfall, not vertically, horizontally. You see this kind of flood or this wall of clouds coming in, and then at the other side you see the eclipse and a much dimmed down sky, almost like I said, twilight. And then look very closely, see eclipse, and it's just feels like on a different world,
It's hard to put
on a
into
different.
words, isn't it? It's almost it's a,
And yeah, and at the same time, because of the heavy kind of condensation in air, you see a rainbow, and that's rare to see with an eclipse at the same time. But I had no professional equipment at the moment, and I only had my phone, so I couldn't, properly record the eclipse. But yeah, it's mesmerizing.
I'll bet you didn't remember what you were doing the next day, but you remember that exact moment. See, that's the same thing for me. I couldn't tell you what I did August 22nd, but I remember like all in detail those 25 minutes or so when everyone was like, "Oh, the eclipse is getting ready," and how it felt afterwards and everything. It is phenomenal. And you're describing in the Bay Area something that I've witnessed myself. My wife and I, when we got married, we actually went to Yosemite. We hiked 9 days through Yosemite, and we spent 3 days in San Francisco before we went out there. And I've seen the wall of mist roll in from the Pacific. It's fascinating to witness. It's a little frightening if you don't know that this is like a regular phenomenon, right? Kind of made me feel like Silent
Mhm.
Hill was rolling in. But to see a rainbow and also a solar eclipse in the background, it's probably imprinted itself on your emotional memory in such a way that you'll never forget it. That's my guess.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely an unforgettable experience. Like with rainbow. I mean, it's not that rare, but still, with all of these, the weathering effects, and the astronomical events happening at the same time. That's one of the most unique experience in my whole life so far.
And it sounds to me like Lapernum, even though he witnessed a synthetic event, I don't think the emotional impact is any different. I think this game immerses us in such a way where what we experienced is this. I think the game helps people that haven't seen these phenomenon get to experience it as well in a really vulnerable state, in a time when you're open to it, when you're not just guarded and you're like, I don't believe any of this. We immerse ourselves in this game, and to have something like that, a celestial ballet, kind of appear before us. It is undeniably wonderful. Delori, I have to ask you: have you ever witnessed a a solar eclipse, either partial or total, in your life? And if not, what was it like when you saw it once? What was it at that point? Anya made it to the location where you started to see the total eclipse appear.
Well, I had the luck to see one in real life. It was in 1999. As you might have guessed, listening to my voice, I am from France, and I've been in. I was with my parents and my brother. We've been to the eastern part of France where the eclipse was supposed to be complete. And what happened this day was the sky was completely obstructed by clouds because it was like one of these terrible summer rains day, and it was raining and raining and raining and windy, and it was absolutely terrible. And I remember my parents just sitting on the front of the car, on the trunk, just sitting there, looking at the sky and looking so desperate because they were so passionate about astronomics and this eclipse. I mean, I think I've heard about this eclipse for one full year before actually seeing it. They constantly spoke about it, and they looked so sad. And all of a sudden, there was this hole in the clouds, like some kind of hole, and we just saw the sun appear like in one snap of the fingers, and it was already almost completely eaten away by the moon. And we all took our glasses, the little boxes, just like you mentioned. We all looked at it, and we just saw the last crescent of sun being hidden by the moon. and we saw the full 2 minutes complete phase. Then the moon just gently moved away, and we saw one crescent again, and the cloud came back, and it was over. And it was so surreal. We were just in the next to the road, jumping and screaming and yelling around because it was like we've been to a rock festival, you know. And 500 meters away, we saw a couple started walking and joined us and said, "Oh, okay, so I guess you did not saw anything you guys too." And we did not dare say them that we actually saw it because of the parallax. They were not able to see it. They did not benefit the little hole we had in the clouds.
My
It
goodness.
felt it's yeah it's and when I speak with it to my parents, when I speak about it to my parents and my brothers, I can still see tears in the air, you know. And
Yeah.
yeah, and just as a little trivia, on the next day, no, on this very day, on the afternoon, my father just needed to light a candle at the nearby church because it was too surreal for him. I guess that's the very first and probably the very last time I saw him in a church, but still he did it, and we still joke around about it nowadays. But yeah, it's still an unforgettable experience. And just like you said, I have no idea what I did the day before. I don't remember what I did the day after. But this 20 minutes of looking at some clouds and these 3 minutes of happiness, and yeah, it's
That's
yeah,
amazing. And it's even more regionalized. It's even more impactful for you. I mean, when we went out in the parking lot, it was cloudy, but 15 minutes before the clouds broke and we were able to see the eclipse happen, and then as the eclipse was waning, as it was coming off, the cloud cover kind of started to come back over, and we all felt something similar, but everybody in the area saw the same thing that we did. You and your family and your parents were in just the right place. If you're telling me that there are folks who were just up the road within walking distance that didn't get to see the same thing you did, that's even more special. That's even more unique. That's a very acute sense of, dare I say, destiny. Maybe,
yeah,
you know,
luck, but even beyond luck, yeah, definitely.
and
It's
then to have your father do something that's symbolic, and kind of, he felt like I need to do something to document this, to kind of offload my feelings. I need to do something physical. Lighting a candle, regardless of where it is, in a church, in a home, in a field, is a sign of perseverance, I guess. It's a sign of memory, right? It's a
yeah.
sign of contribution and tribute. So I think that's a really wonderful piece of information to know as well. I think that's great. Man, I love these stories. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and still being emotional, I can still feel some emotions pouring back in as I remember this story. Man, it's more than 20 years ago, but yeah, it was just like it happened yesterday.
that's wonderful. I can't wait. I can't wait until we all get to see the next solar eclipse in the real world. And if
Yeah,
if for whatever reason we can't, this game is a wonderful place for us to get the same type of feeling. And we know that because Lapernum described, I think, in quite good detail, the same feelings that we all had. And the only difference was the setting. That's it. But the feelings and the immersion was the same. That's fantastic. Awesome. Okay. I could talk about that all day, but I kind of want to learn a few things from you guys about some of the realities, of the physicality of what a solar eclipse can do, and what happens with the shape of a planet and the photo effects, I guess you could say, the optics of the corona, which is the glow of the planet, of the sun or the star behind the celestial object that may be obfuscating it. So in this case, Hurston. Can you tell me what a Bailey bead is? Can you tell me how it affects the observer's view, what we will see, and why it is such a neat thing that Hurston, or why it is such an opportune planet, specifically Hurston, to experience those things and to see those things.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I wanna
Go ahead.
first like introduce how our plan is. So we are actually in game in Star Citizen, our operation, the final result of stage 3 is an annular eclipse. That's what we can see right now from the window. But actually, we are trying to like imitating to reach the effect in real life as a full eclipse. Because in real life, if it's a full eclipse, you can still see some lights coming out from the peripheral of the moon. It's like something like a particles or a light, a piece of light flicking out. But in Star Citizen, since it's a game and it's not real life, it's very understandable that there's no particles actually emitting out from the Stanton. And if it's a full eclipse, like the Hurston is blocking the Stanton fully, you cannot see any that kind of lights coming out from the peripheral, but only the atmosphere lit up by the light from the Stanton. So we will just reach the umbral focal point and go a little bit further and let the Stanton caster a very thin circle around Thurston. That circle will produce the lights that we can see in real life as a full eclipse. So actually we're trying to reach the umbral focal point, get an annular eclipse to get the effect as a full eclipse in real life. And I have to say that effect is very, very good. It's pretty shocking.
It blew your
Yes.
mind. Did you expect to see what you saw when you got out there? Because from what I'm guessing you guys didn't expect to see what you're about to describe to me. I think in detail. You mentioned like how light doesn't necessarily bend around the planet, but the atmosphere plays a part in this. And while we know that the Stanton Star is simulated, the game's ability to portray some of the things that I think you guys are about to talk about is pretty fascinating. What did you see when you got out there? What, instead of just the little corona, the backlight, did you notice any deviations in the curve of the corona or the luminescence? And if so, what caused that?
Delori, want to talk about that? Since you were the first to spot that
Uh,
thing,
well,
the first Bailey beats.
well, it comes so slowly, and I mean we've been staring at a black disk for multiple hours. It comes so slowly, you don't even notice when it starts. But in terms of luminescence, I mean it comes around so slowly, and so it's difficult to describe. I think one of the way of describing it is just look at the eclipse right now from where we are. You can see it has significantly changed since the beginning of this talk we are having. And if I've been looking at the eclipse since we took off, and I cannot tell you when did we started to go off center, for example, because you can see that on the top left of your screen the halo the ring is thinner than on the bottom right. So it simply means that we are going slightly off center and pointing towards the bottom left. Sorry. It appears pretty much the same way. I mean, we did not realize until it was already pretty much further in. We had the ETA given by Bofone, who had the exact map and position being followed and noted. But yeah, at some point we realized the ring started to be more and more complete, and it required a little bit of course correction. And then we realized that some points around the circle were not circle. It was not round. It was edgy. and it was not only a polygon, so it was not only an LOD effect. So it was mesmerizing, and we all started to, I guess myself, I started to believe that we were on course to see something pretty interesting and memorable. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I would like to add to that. In real life, when you're witnessing a total eclipse, and sometimes, say, if the object that is kind of blocking the sunlight and causing the eclipse just a little bit offset, where the two are not perfectly merged together, you would see, like on camera when you take a photo, you would see like gigantic glare from one side. And even when the two objects are fully merged together, sometimes you would still see glares here and there along the arc, the curvature of the moon. It's actually caused by sort of the uneven surfaces on the moon, such as craters, canyons, valleys, etc. So when if you think about this diagram, when the angular diameter of the star of our sun is exactly the same as the kind of the average radius of or the average diameter, angular diameter of our moon, when they're matched, some light rays will come through those dips first, right? And then they would create these this beautiful glare, and that's what they call the Bailey beam. In Star Citizen, when we were in the beginning of this tour, when we were at the Umbra focal point, you could, if I asked everybody when we were at that point and looked very closely along the range of Hurston, you could possibly spot these dimmed kind of parts or dimmed spots on the range. And while we were kind of on our final approach on the mission, and when we were kind of trying to reach that Umbra focal point, something interesting happened, and it actually simulated or mimicked the real life Bailey beads effect. We saw first just one glare appeared, one kind of beam of light appeared on just one side or one exact point of of the Hurston planet, and then that range started to grow, and it followed the arc, followed the curvature of the planet, and then all the way until it completes a full range. And during that process, we noticed, some places they kind of stand out more than the like other parts, and some parts are more dimmed or darker. So we started to wonder, does the planet actually render all of its kind of terrestrial surface, even if we're this far away from it? And then we actually had a scientist on board. She was taking time lapse on a fixed interval over the entire course of the journey with relatively high resolution, so we can do photo analysis in the post. We anticipated that part, something unexpected would happen, because in the beginning we wouldn't even think that an eclipse was even possible. But at that point, we thought, okay, we took a very closer look at the images that we gathered. We realized the Hurston planet was actually at that point it's rendered as a very low level of detail object, and it's quite even. very rounded, even spherical shape. And we noticed the volumetric clouds layer. We see like there's a tiny little bit here and there. We see that kind of diffused, lots of particles floating around. And we realized, oh, those were the volumetric cloud layer. And then we immediately thought, oh, during last year Operation Icarus, we realized the Stanton, when we get to the surface of Stanton Star, we realized that the star wasn't a perfect spherical object. It actually has polygonal surfaces. Even from this distance, we would still be able to kind of, if you look closely at the this is, I think the jargon is called the Antumbra eclipse at this point when where we're currently at. And you look very closely at the edge of the Stanton Star backdrop, you would see those edges. You see those polygonal faces. So that creates a second layer of uneven surface. So those two factors combined, right, the volumetric clouds and the polygonal surfaces, those two combined would create or simulate this Bailey beam, where if you are very, very close to that total eclipse point, the umbra focal point, then there might be one edge, right? One edge or one kind of edge on the Stanton Star backdrop. They would shine a light first and through the atmospheric layer, and then that creates that Bailey beam, gigantic glare. So it was totally unexpected, and we, to our very surprise, that this game engine could even simulate such an in-game, such a real-life, phenomenon. And we were like, oh my god, this is what they're talking about. Take a point of realism, and this it just, well, I don't know if they even know about this, but certainly to us it's a happy accident in the end.
It's a little bit of the realism of this engine literally shining through, right? I think that's fantastic. And it makes me think about, I didn't know this until I was in my late 30s, but our own planet is not perfectly spherical. Hurston isn't technically perfectly spherical. The sun behind it, Stanton, isn't perfectly spherical. Obviously, these are shapes in a game engine that are designed, but the way in which they're designed allows some of these features to happen. If you were able to do the same thing, but instead of using Hurston, if you were able to do this with Earth, you would be kind of the same thing. You would eventually get to a point where you could see light peeking around the total. I guess that would be a total Earth eclipse? I don't know what that would be called. But yeah, a total eclipse would eventually start to shine light around it because the Earth is experiencing the same thing that you're describing here. That's a fascinating thing to think about. And also, you said you realized it afterwards, not while it was happening. And that makes sense to me because you guys were so busy making sure, keeping track, documenting, staying on top of things, sticking to the plan, that you weren't able to always just keep your eyes glued to the actual visual experience as you were going along. So that was just icing on the cake. Did you realize that after the fact, or how far out were you when you were able to discover that? Was it tens of minutes, or was it a day later, or just kind of curious?
I think it was what once we reached the Umbra focal point, we stood there on that mission day. We stood there for about 2 or 3 hours. So it's pretty late for one part of our crew, and we EVA'd out of our ships, and we took some group photos obviously, and that while everybody was waiting and kind of trying to pose up for the shot, and that's the moment we started to think, how is that even possible, and what could have caused it. And then that's where we kind of came up with the theory, and then later on we verified it just by kind of flying it that journey, just very short part of it, again from the Umbra focal point back to the planet, and then we can see the effects in reverse, and then we realize, oh yeah, that's exactly what caused it.
fascinating. That is so cool. I think that's neat. And I can't wait to see what other real optical effects this Astro Engine simulation can show us as you guys further explore its edges and regions that weren't necessarily meant to be found just yet, but are just waiting to be found just because of the circumstance of this game and everybody involved in it. This is fascinating. I'm really happy that you guys were able to not only put together this mission, but also to document everything that needed to be done and then stick with it all the way through to the end. And the results were fascinating. I love to hear you talk about it. I think anybody who knows you guys through your videos, through your recollections of the things that you've accomplished, or through your org and your group as it is, knows that you are 100% explorers, and that these types of things are the fruit of your efforts. Not only were you surprised and satisfied with what you saw, but I am completely satisfied, and I know our listeners are going to be satisfied by what they hear here as well. This has been a great interview, and I'm really glad that we were able to sit down and get not only your point of view from the beginning to the end, but also we were able to hear from Lapernum, and we were able to hear from Delori. And there are, it sounds to me like 9 other people who helped out with this exploration as well. Before I start ramping down, I do have a few things to say to each of you about it, based just on what you've told me. Would you, if possible, would you like to mention their names, if that's something that you'd be comfortable with, just so we could know who else helped?
Yes, obviously. I cannot appreciate enough their efforts. Without every single one's input, this mission was not going to succeed in the very beginning. So we had Dr. Entropy as our medic. We had Greg PCH as a crew assistant, Falcor as crew assistant. We had Snakey Leroy. How do I pronounce his name correctly? I believe Delori would pronounce his name much better.
Snacky le vrai. Snacky le vrai.
Okay. Yeah, and then we had Waddle, who came on to help during the later stage when we after the initial kind of survey, and we kind of designed a new stage of the mission called the family dinner, which trying to reach to a distance where we could see transit effect of all of the Hurston moons. So he came on to help during that phase a lot. Yeah, and then we have let me actually pull out the entire list. Yeah, and then we have the Loadmaster, who's helping in setting up the ships in the beginning. Delirious Rex, and then yeah, that's and then I think in the beginning of the mission we also had Vader join us to help on basically just as a general crew, and then we have plenty of other people who regularly come in just as save points for the later stage.
So, like with most of your missions, and I'm sure most of your future missions, this was a huge effort, a collaboration that couldn't just happen without a support structure. And that support structure was the community that came together to assist you. And I can just tell how grateful you are, and I would be too if I was able to accomplish half of what you guys have done in the short time that you've taken on this wonderful role as explorers, well-known explorers in Star Citizen. And I guess I'm going to say a few things about each of you guys, and then we'll turn the interview down. First, I'll say thank you so much for spending time with me. This is great. I'd like to make a comment about Lapernum, if I may. So let me get the camera over to him, sir. As you may know, historically, Marco Polo was a Venetian explorer. and he was tasked with exploring the Far East. And at that time, the Americas weren't even discovered, at least as far as from the European historical standpoint. They didn't know about the other side of the ocean. Marco Polo came back, and if we are to believe history, what history tells us, he told the king and queen that after he visited China, he said, "I did not tell them half of what I saw because I knew I wouldn't be believed." In this case, we get to see everything because you were there to document it. And I think that's a wonderful reality and trait of a good journalist, is someone who is able to bring back the unbelievable things so that you can share them with other people. Obviously, everybody on the trip got to experience it, but now the listeners and viewers will because you were able to help them. So I think that's great. For Delori, a goal without a plan is just a wish. I've known that since I got started in my project fieldwork. Someone told me that, I can't remember who said it, but it stuck with me, and it's true. Good plans. A plan is useless when things start going, but planning is essential when making sure that we are going to maximize the likelihood of success. What you did was indispensable for the success of the mission, and I know that going forward you're going to continue to do that and help everybody, whoever wants your assistance with an exploration or an expedition in the best possible way, as you've proven twice already. And I have to say, Bo, I loved Jules Verne growing up. I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea when I was too young to understand half of it, but I do remember a quote when I can't remember who was describing Captain Nemo, but there is a quote where he said, "Where others have failed, I will not fail." And I think that that's what you've brought to this project and every other expedition that you've ever led is you can't be a good leader without people helping you, and the people are nothing without a good leader. There's a 50-50 dependency there. And I think that what you have shown here is that not only is Curvature one of the most capable exploration expeditions and communities out there, but that also not just me, all of us who are watching, we can't wait to see what you discover next. So
I'm so flattered. Thank you so much for the compliments.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
thank you guys. We're going to close this out with one last shot of that awesome view of Hurston and the growing corona of the Stanton Star behind it. And I can't wait to interview you guys next. Thank you again, and have a good day. Thanks for listening, everybody.